Every major defense mechanism explained. 1. Repression. Repression is when we push thoughts, memories, or desires that are too painful or distressing out of our conscious mind. Think of it like burying something deep underground so we don't have to deal with it. For example, someone might repress the memory of a traumatic event because thinking about it would cause overwhelming anxiety. Repression doesn't make the memory disappear, though. It just gets stored in the unconscious mind, where it might influence behavior without the person realizing it. The hidden effects of repression. Though repression keeps painful material out of conscious awareness, it doesn't mean the material is gone. In fact, repressed memories and emotions can still affect us. They might resurface in other ways, such as in dreams, unexplained anxiety, and Freudian slips. In dreams, repressed thoughts and feelings often emerge in symbolic or distorted forms. In unexplained anxiety, since repressed material is still active in the unconscious, it can create anxiety or emotional turmoil without the person understanding why. In Freudian slips, repressed thoughts can slip out in everyday conversation, often referred to as Freudian slips. For example, accidentally saying something revealing when you meant to say something else. Therapy for repression. In therapy, especially in psychoanalytic or psychodynamic approaches, the goal is often to bring repressed thoughts and feelings to the surface so they can be processed consciously. Techniques like free association, where the patient says whatever comes to mind without filtering, or dream analysis are used to uncover repressed material. The idea is that by acknowledging and confronting the repressed thoughts, the person can relieve the tension caused by them and heal emotionally. 2. Denial. Denial can serve as a short-term coping mechanism, especially when a person is hit with a situation that's too overwhelming to deal with all at once. In the initial stages of a crisis or shock, denial can give a person the emotional space they need to gradually come to terms with the reality. It buys time for the mind to adjust, preventing them from being completely overwhelmed. While denial can be helpful in the short term, relying on it for too long can cause problems. Refusing to face reality often means avoiding necessary action or refusing to seek help when it's needed. For instance, health deterioration. If someone in denial about their illness refuses to follow medical advice, their health can deteriorate rapidly. Relationship strain. In relationships, denial can prevent a person from recognizing and addressing issues, such as abusive behavior or emotional distance. This can lead to unresolved conflict and, ultimately, the breakdown of the relationship. Addiction. In cases of addiction, denial prevents the person from acknowledging they have a problem, which makes it harder for them to seek treatment or make positive changes. Over time, living in denial becomes harder to sustain. The underlying issue doesn't go away, and the longer it's avoided, the more likely it is to lead to emotional, physical, or social consequences. Denial can prevent growth, healing, and resolution, keeping a person stuck in unhealthy patterns. Overcoming denial. Overcoming denial requires a person to gradually confront the reality they're avoiding. This often happens through external influences, such as loved ones, a therapist, or life circumstances, that help the person see the truth in a less threatening way. Some key steps include gaining awareness. The first step is recognizing that denial is present. This often requires an external push or a moment of self-reflection, where the person acknowledges that something isn't right. Seeking support. Therapy can be instrumental in helping someone work through denial. A therapist can guide the person in gradually confronting the truth without feeling overwhelmed by it. Accepting reality. Accepting the facts, no matter how painful, is the only way to move forward. Once a person accepts reality, they can start to take meaningful steps toward change. Whether that's seeking treatment, addressing a problem, or simply processing the emotions they've been avoiding. 3. Projection. Projection is when we attribute our own unacceptable feelings, thoughts, or impulses to someone else. Imagine you're feeling angry or jealous, but instead of acknowledging that, you accuse another person of being the one who's angry or jealous. It's a way of avoiding the discomfort of those emotions by shifting the blame onto someone else. Why we use projection. Projection is an unconscious process, meaning the person isn't aware they're doing it. It's a way to defend the self from feelings that are too threatening or contradictory to handle consciously. For instance, if someone sees themselves as a good, moral person, it might be hard for them to accept feelings of anger, envy, or lust. So instead of acknowledging those emotions, they project them onto others. This helps them maintain their self-image and avoid internal conflict. Projection is also a way to manage emotional discomfort. By externalizing difficult feelings, we don't have to admit that we're the ones feeling them. It creates a psychological distance between the person and the emotions they find unacceptable. The impact of projection. While projection might help a person cope in the short term, it can lead to problems in relationships and personal growth. Since projection distorts reality, it can make it difficult for a person to have honest, healthy interactions with others. Here are a few key ways projection can impact someone's life. 1. Strained relationships. Projection often leads to misunderstandings and conflict. When someone projects their feelings onto another person, they may start treating that person unfairly based on those projections. For instance, accusing someone of feelings or behaviors they don't actually have can create tension, resentment, or even end relationships. 2. Lack of self-awareness. Because projection involves denying and avoiding one's own feelings, it can prevent personal growth. A person who frequently projects is unable to confront and address their own emotional issues, which keeps them from developing greater self-awareness and emotional intelligence. 3. Perpetuating negative patterns. Projection can cause a person to continuously avoid taking responsibility for their actions and feelings. This not only prevents them from resolving personal issues, but also reinforces negative patterns of behavior. For example, if someone repeatedly accuses others of being untrustworthy because of their own deep-seated trust issues, they might sabotage relationships rather than working through their own insecurities. Recognizing projection in yourself. It can be difficult to recognize when you're projecting because it's an unconscious process. However, there are some signs that can help you identify projection in your own behavior. Repeated accusations. If you find yourself frequently accusing others of behaviors or feelings you're sensitive about, it could be a sign of projection. For example, accusing someone of being selfish when you're actually struggling with selfishness yourself. Strong emotional reactions. If you have a disproportionately strong emotional reaction to something someone else does, especially if it doesn't seem to warrant that reaction, it might be worth reflecting on whether that reaction is rooted in your own feelings. Patterns in relationships. Projection often leads to repeated patterns in relationships. If you find that you have the same kinds of conflicts or negative feelings toward different people, it could indicate that you're projecting unresolved emotions. Overcoming projection. Overcoming projection requires increasing self-awareness and taking responsibility for your own thoughts and feelings. Here are some ways to work through projection. 1. Reflect on your emotions. Take time to think about your feelings and how they might be influencing your perceptions of others. If you find yourself accusing someone of something, ask yourself if that feeling might actually belong to you. 2. Accept uncomfortable emotions. Instead of avoiding or denying feelings like anger, jealousy, or guilt, try to acknowledge and accept them. Everyone has difficult emotions. It's part of being human. The more comfortable you become with your own emotions, the less likely you'll need to project them onto others. 3. Seek feedback. Sometimes it's helpful to get feedback from trusted friends, family, or a therapist. They can provide an outside perspective on whether you might be projecting, helping you see things you might not notice on your own. 4. Therapy. Working with a therapist can be especially helpful in identifying and addressing projection. Therapy can help you explore underlying emotions, gain insight into your behavior, and learn healthier ways of dealing with difficult feelings. 4. Displacement. Displacement occurs when someone experiences strong emotions, often negative ones like anger or frustration, but feels unable to express those feelings directly toward the person or thing that caused them. Instead, they unconsciously shift those emotions onto someone or something else that is less threatening or easier to confront. This allows them to release pent-up feelings without risking the consequences of expressing them toward the real source of distress. So in other words, displacement is about redirecting emotional energy from a threatening target to a safer one. The person or object that becomes the recipient of these emotions often has little to do with the actual cause of the feelings, but they become a stand-in for the real source. Examples of displacement. 1. Workplace stress. Imagine you're frustrated with your boss for being overly critical or unfair, but you can't express that anger because you fear losing your job or facing further criticism. Instead of confronting your boss, you might come home and lash out at your partner or children. In this case, your family becomes the target of your displaced anger, even though they aren't the cause of your frustration. 2. Academic pressure. A student might feel stressed and overwhelmed by a tough exam, but instead of expressing their frustration about the pressure or workload, they might take it out on a friend or sibling by being unnecessarily short or irritable with them. The friend or sibling becomes the recipient of the displaced emotions, even though they have nothing to do with the exam stress. Relationship tension. If someone is angry or hurt by their partner but doesn't feel comfortable confronting them, maybe due to fear of conflict or rejection, they might redirect that anger toward a third party, such as a friend or coworker. They avoid confronting the source of the tension, but still find a way to release the emotions by targeting someone else. Overcoming displacement. To overcome displacement, it's important to develop healthier ways of coping with emotions. Here are some steps that can help. 1. Increase self-awareness. The first step is recognizing when you're displacing emotions. Pay attention to moments when your emotional reactions seem out of proportion or directed at the wrong person. Reflect on what's really bothering you and whether your anger or frustration might be rooted elsewhere. 2. Identify the source of emotions. Try to trace your feelings back to their original source. For example, if you're snapping at your partner, ask yourself if something else, like stress at work, is actually the cause. Identifying the true source of your emotions is key to addressing them effectively. 3. Practice direct communication. Instead of displacing emotions, work on expressing them directly to the source in a constructive way. This might involve having difficult conversations, but addressing the root of your emotions can lead to resolution rather than prolonging conflict. 4. Develop healthy outlets. Finding healthy ways to release emotional energy can reduce the need for displacement. For example, exercise, creative hobbies, or journaling can help you process emotions like anger or frustration in a more positive and less harmful way. 5. Seek professional help. If displacement is a recurring issue, therapy can be helpful in developing better coping mechanisms and understanding the underlying causes of your emotions. A therapist can help you learn how to manage feelings in a healthier way, improving both your self-awareness and your relationships. Rationalization. Rationalization serves as a protective barrier between a person's real motives and the discomfort or guilt they may experience if they were to acknowledge those motives honestly. Instead of admitting to uncomfortable truths, like making a decision based on selfish desires or feeling guilty for doing something wrong, the person comes up with an explanation that sounds reasonable and more acceptable. It's a way to protect one's self-esteem, avoid guilt, or explain away behavior that might otherwise be embarrassing or unacceptable. Examples of rationalization. 1. Academic failure. A student who fails an important exam might rationalize it by saying, "I didn't really care about that subject anyway." Or, "The test was unfair," rather than admitting that they didn't study hard enough or weren't prepared. This allows them to protect their ego from the blow of failure by externalizing the reason for the outcome. 2. Poor relationship choices. Someone might stay in a toxic relationship and rationalize it by saying, "All relationships are hard," or "My partner only gets angry because they care about me." Instead of confronting the reality of being in an unhealthy relationship, rationalization allows them to avoid the emotional discomfort that would come with acknowledging the truth. 3. Unhealthy habits. A person who eats junk food regularly might rationalize their behavior by saying, "I deserve to treat myself after a long day," Or, it's not that bad if I only do it occasionally, even though they may know that their diet is unhealthy. The rationalization helps them avoid confronting the potential harm they are doing to their body. Fourth, ethical compromises. Someone who engages in unethical behavior at work, such as lying or cutting corners, might rationalize it by saying, everyone else does it, or it's just a small thing, it won't hurt anyone. This helps them avoid feeling guilty or ashamed of their actions by downplaying the moral implications. Overcoming rationalization. 1. Self-reflection. Take time to examine your decisions and behaviors without immediately trying to justify them. Ask yourself why you acted in a certain way or why you feel the need to explain your actions. Are you truly being honest with yourself, or are you avoiding an uncomfortable truth? 2. Take responsibility. Instead of rationalizing away mistakes or failures, own up to them. Admitting when you've made a mistake or behaved in a way that's inconsistent with your values is a crucial step toward personal growth and improvement. 3. Seek external feedback. Sometimes others can see our rationalizations more clearly than we can. Talk to trusted friends or a therapist who can provide honest feedback and help you recognize when you're making excuses for your behavior. 4. Confront discomfort. Part of overcoming rationalization involves learning to sit with discomfort. It's natural to want to protect yourself from guilt or shame, but confronting these emotions head-on allows you to grow and learn from your experiences. 5. Develop better coping strategies. Instead of relying on rationalization to manage emotional discomfort, work on developing healthier ways to cope. This might include practicing mindfulness, improving communication skills, or seeking therapy to address underlying issues. 6. Reaction formation is a defense mechanism where a person unconsciously transforms their true, often negative or unacceptable thoughts, feelings, or impulses into their opposite. This means they behave in a way that is the complete reverse of how they actually feel, typically to hide their real feelings or to avoid dealing with emotions that cause them discomfort or anxiety. In essence, they overcompensate by acting in ways that are exaggerated or overly positive, masking what they're really feeling inside. Examples of reaction formation. 1. Hostility, hidden as kindness. 2. Unwanted sexual desires. 3. Overprotective parenting. 4. Public moral stance versus private behavior. Short-term benefits of reaction formation. In the short term, reaction formation can serve several purposes like 1. Emotional relief. 2. Maintaining social harmony. 3. Protecting relationships. Long-term consequences of reaction formation. While reaction formation might offer short-term relief, it often leads to significant emotional and psychological challenges in the long run. 1. Emotional exhaustion. 2. Internal conflict. 3. Relationship strain. 4. Repression of true desires. 5. Inauthenticity and identity issues. Overcoming reaction formation. To move beyond reaction formation, it's important to build self-awareness and develop healthier ways of dealing with conflicting emotions. Here are some strategies that can help. 1. Increase emotional awareness. The first step to overcoming reaction formation is to become more in touch with your real feelings. This might involve journaling, meditating, or talking with a therapist to explore the emotions you're trying to suppress or reverse. 2. Acknowledge uncomfortable feelings. Instead of denying or masking uncomfortable feelings, try to accept them without judgment. Recognizing that it's okay to feel anger, jealousy, or frustration can help reduce the need to engage in reaction formation. 3. Practice authenticity. Work on expressing your true feelings in a constructive and respectful way. For example, if you feel angry with someone, instead of pretending to be overly kind, acknowledge your anger and find a healthy way to communicate it. This can help you build more genuine connections with others. 4. Seek therapy. Professional help can be beneficial in identifying when you're using reaction formation and learning healthier coping mechanisms. A therapist can help you explore the root causes of your feelings and provide strategies for dealing with uncomfortable emotions in a more authentic way. 5. Challenge your fears. Often, reaction formation is driven by a fear of what would happen if you acknowledge your true feelings. By gradually confronting those fears and realizing that it's okay to feel and express negative emotions, you can reduce the need for reaction formation. 7. Regression. Regression is a defense mechanism where a person reverts to behaviors, thoughts, or emotions characteristic of an earlier stage of development in response to stress, fear, or frustration. When confronted with situations that feel overwhelming or emotionally difficult, individuals may unconsciously return to more childlike or less mature behaviors as a way to cope with the discomfort or anxiety they are experiencing. These behaviors might include crying, whining, or pouting, throwing temper tantrums, engaging in childish activities, acting overly dependent. Long-term consequences of regression. While regression might help someone feel better temporarily, relying on it too often can have negative effects over time. 1. Avoidance of growth. If someone frequently regresses when faced with stress, they may avoid learning the skills necessary to handle adult responsibilities and emotions. Over time, this can hinder personal growth and emotional development, preventing the person from effectively coping with life's challenges. 2. Strained relationships. Regression can cause friction in relationships, especially when a person consistently reverts to childish behavior in the face of conflict. This may lead to frustration or resentment from loved ones who expect more mature responses to problems. 3. Dependency on others. When someone regresses, they often seek excessive support from others, which can lead to increased dependency. In the long run, this may prevent them from developing independence and self-reliance, as they come to rely on others to manage stress for them. 4. Inappropriate behavior for the situation. Reverting to childish behaviors in adult situations can lead to negative consequences, such as not being taken seriously at work or in social contexts. Repeated regression might make others view the individual as immature or irresponsible. 5. Inability to address the root cause. Regression allows people to escape from stressful situations, but doesn't actually solve the underlying problem. By avoiding the source of their stress, individuals may miss opportunities to learn healthier coping mechanisms or address the root causes of their anxiety or frustration. Overcoming regression. 1. Develop emotional awareness. Pay attention to the situations that trigger your regressive behavior. By becoming more aware of your emotions and recognizing when you're feeling overwhelmed or anxious, you can start to address the underlying issues instead of reverting to childlike behaviors. 2. Build healthier coping mechanisms. Instead of relying on regression, develop more mature coping strategies, such as problem solving, seeking social support in an appropriate way, practicing mindfulness, or engaging in physical activities that reduce stress. 3. Practice self-soothing as an adult. Find ways to soothe yourself in a healthy, adult manner. This might include meditating, journaling, deep breathing exercises, or engaging in creative activities. These methods can provide comfort without regressing to childhood habits. 4. Increase self-reliance. Work on becoming more independent by taking responsibility for your emotions and actions. This might involve setting goals for personal growth, improving your ability to manage stress, and finding ways to handle conflicts without reverting to immature behaviors. 5. Seek professional help. If you find that you're frequently regressing in response to stress and it's impacting your life negatively, working with a therapist can help. A therapist can assist you in understanding the underlying causes of your regression and provide guidance on how to develop healthier coping mechanisms. 8. Sublimation is a defense mechanism in which socially unacceptable impulses or desires are transformed into socially acceptable actions or behaviors. Instead of acting on harmful or inappropriate urges, a person channels that energy into productive, constructive, or creative outlets. Unlike other defense mechanisms, sublimation is considered a healthy and adaptive way to manage negative emotions or desires because it allows individuals to express their instincts in a way that benefits both themselves and society. Examples of sublimation. 1. aggression into sports, 2, sexual urges into art, 3, anger into activism, 4, frustration into problem-solving, 5, sadness into helping others. Long-term benefits of sublimation: 1, personal fulfillment, 2, emotional maturity, 3, achievement and success, 4, improved relationships. Challenges of sublimation. While sublimation is generally considered a healthy defense mechanism, there are some challenges associated with it. 1, delayed confrontation of issues. Sublimation allows individuals to avoid confronting the root cause of their emotions. While this can be helpful in the short term, it may prevent them from fully addressing underlying issues, such as unresolved trauma or personal conflicts. 2, overinvestment in sublimated activities. Some people may become overly invested in the activities they use for sublimation, to the point where they neglect other aspects of their lives. For example, someone might become so focused on work or a creative project that they avoid dealing with personal relationships or emotional needs. 3, risk of burnout. If someone relies too heavily on sublimation to cope with their emotions, they may eventually experience burnout, especially if they use work, exercise, or activism as their primary outlet for stress. It's important to balance sublimated activities with other forms of self-care and emotional expression. Overcoming over-reliance on sublimation. 1, acknowledge your emotions. While sublimation allows you to channel your emotions constructively, it's still important to acknowledge what you're feeling. Practice identifying and naming your emotions, even as you channel them into positive actions. 2, diversify your coping strategies. In addition to sublimation, develop other ways to cope with stress, such as talking to friends, journaling, or practicing mindfulness. This will help you avoid burnout and ensure that you're addressing the root cause of your emotions. 3, take breaks. If you find that you're using sublimated activities like work or exercise excessively, take regular breaks to rest and recharge. This will prevent you from becoming overly dependent on those outlets for emotional relief. 4, seek support. If you're using sublimation to cope with unresolved emotional issues or trauma, consider seeking support from a therapist. A professional can help you work through your emotions in a healthy way. 9, identification. Identification is a defense mechanism in which an individual unconsciously adopts the characteristics, behaviors, or attributes of another person or group, often someone they admire or see as powerful, successful, or authoritative. This process allows the person to feel more aligned with the traits they lack or desire, helping them manage feelings of insecurity, fear, or inadequacy. By identifying with someone else, they can reduce anxiety, increase their self-esteem, or cope with difficult emotions. Unlike other defense mechanisms that involve avoiding or distorting reality, identification allows individuals to absorb positive qualities from others. It can be a way of learning, growing, and developing a sense of self, but it can also be a means of dealing with personal shortcomings or emotional conflicts. Types of identification. Identification can manifest in different ways depending on the emotional needs or situations of the individual. Here are a few common types. 1, positive identification. This occurs when a person identifies with someone they admire or aspire to be like. For example, a child might identify with a parent, teacher, or sports hero, adopting behaviors, attitudes, or ideals that they see as desirable. This form of identification is common in personal development as it helps people learn from role models. 2, defensive identification. Sometimes identification serves as a defense mechanism to cope with feelings of powerlessness, insecurity, or fear. For instance, a person might identify with an aggressor or bully to avoid being the target of harm. By adopting the traits of someone they fear, they may feel safer or more in control of the situation. Third, group identification. People often identify with a group or social category, e.g., a religious group, political party, or cultural identity, to strengthen their sense of belonging and self-esteem. Group identification can provide individuals with a sense of purpose and security, especially during times of uncertainty or personal crisis. 4, Identification with authority. In some cases, individuals identify with authority figures to gain a sense of power or control. For example, an employee might adopt the values and attitudes of their boss, seeing them as successful or authoritative. This helps the individual feel more secure in their own role and boosts their confidence in handling difficult tasks or decisions. Potential challenges of identification. While identification can be beneficial, it can also create challenges if not managed carefully. 1. Loss of individuality. Over-identifying with someone else can lead to a loss of personal identity. If individuals rely too heavily on others for their sense of self, they may struggle to define their own values, beliefs, or desires. 2. Unhealthy role models. If someone identifies with a negative or destructive role model, e.g., a bully, a criminal figure, or someone with toxic traits, they may adopt harmful behaviors or attitudes. This can lead to poor decision-making and negative consequences in their personal or professional life. 3. Dependency on others. Over-identification with others can lead to emotional dependency. If individuals rely too much on role models or authority figures for validation, they may struggle to make independent decisions or develop their own sense of self-worth. 4. Unrealistic expectations. Sometimes identification can lead to unrealistic expectations. For example, a person who identifies with a highly successful figure might feel pressure to achieve the same level of success, leading to feelings of inadequacy or failure if they fall short. Overcoming over-identification. While identification can be a healthy part of personal development, it's important to balance it with self-awareness and independence. Here are some strategies for managing identification. 1. Develop your own identity. Focus on defining your own values, beliefs, and goals. While it's natural to admire others, work on developing a sense of self that is distinct from those around you. 2. Choose positive role models. Be mindful of who you identify with. Choose role models who embody positive qualities and values that align with your own long-term goals and well-being. 3. Balance independence and influence. It's healthy to learn from others, but make sure you're also developing your own voice and perspective. Practice making decisions independently without relying too heavily on the influence of others. 4. Reflect on your motivations. Ask yourself why you're identifying with a particular person or group. Are you doing it to boost your self-esteem, gain acceptance, or cope with anxiety? Understanding your motivations can help you manage identification in a more balanced and constructive way. 10. Intellectualization. Intellectualization is a defense mechanism in which a person avoids uncomfortable emotions by focusing on logic, reasoning, and analysis. Instead of confronting or feeling their emotions directly, they detach from the emotional aspect of a situation and approach it in an intellectual, often abstract, way. By analyzing the situation or problem at a purely cognitive level, they protect themselves from the anxiety, fear, or pain associated with it. Examples of intellectualization. 1. Dealing with grief through logic. When faced with the loss of a loved one, instead of feeling the pain of the loss, a person might focus on the logistics of planning the funeral or talk about the science of death and dying. They may become preoccupied with philosophical discussions about the meaning of life and death, avoiding the emotional impact of their grief. 2. Academic detachment from personal issues. A psychology student struggling with personal anxiety might talk about their situation using psychological jargon, diagnosing themselves in clinical terms without ever actually expressing how they feel. They intellectualize the issue instead of allowing themselves to experience their anxiety on an emotional level. 3. Medical crisis and research. Someone diagnosed with a serious illness might avoid feeling scared or upset by diving into medical research, reading journal articles, or obsessing over treatment options. While this focus on knowledge gives them a sense of control, it also prevents them from acknowledging the emotional impact of their condition. 4. Work stress and overanalysis. A person overwhelmed by stress at work might intellectualize their experience by discussing workplace dynamics, the efficiency of systems, or management theories instead of admitting that they feel anxious or burned out. By turning their feelings into an impersonal problem to be solved, they distance themselves from their emotional experience. Long-term effects of intellectualization: 1. Emotional detachment. 2. Unresolved emotional issues. 3. Strained relationships. 4. Reduced emotional intelligence. 5. Increased anxiety or frustration. Overcoming over-reliance on intellectualization. 1. Acknowledge your emotions. Practice identifying and acknowledging your emotions, even if it feels uncomfortable. Instead of analyzing a situation right away, take time to sit with your feelings and allow yourself to experience them fully. 2. Engage in emotional processing. Find healthy ways to process your emotions, such as journaling, talking to a trusted friend, or seeking therapy. Expressing your feelings can help you work through them rather than avoiding them through logic. 3. Balance logic with emotion. When dealing with stressful situations, try to balance intellectual analysis with emotional awareness. Recognize when you're using logic to avoid emotions and consciously make an effort to address both aspects. 4. Seek emotional support. If you struggle with expressing or processing emotions, consider seeking support from a therapist or counselor. They can help you explore and understand your emotions in a safe and supportive environment, guiding you toward healthier coping strategies. If you found this video helpful, kindly hit the like button and subscribe to this channel for more videos like this.